This is what I found. A KTM Duke 125. The guy who owned it before me gave up on it. Said he couldn't get it to start and didn't know what was wrong. But I don't see a broken bike. I see potential. The kind of build that just needs time, patience, and is mostly here as a learning curve. So let's start testing our limits. We're jumping straight in, full strip down. Fairings off, tank off, wiring, subframe, engine, everything. This isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about rebuilding the whole thing from scratch. So let's now just strip everything to a bare and get the engine on so we can start working on that. So here we're busy taking the clutch cover off to get a better look at the water pump and clutch assembly. Just making sure everything inside is still running smooth. First thing we tackled was the water pump gear. It's held in place by a small circle clip, nothing too hectic. You just get in there, pop that clip off carefully, and then pull the gear slides right off with a bit of a pull. And here's why we are doing all of this. If you look closely, you'll see there's a tooth completely gone on this gear. And not just one, there's another 2 teeth chipped off on the other side as well. That's already missing 3. And if one more had gone, the gear would have stopped turning entirely. No turning means no coolant flow, and that's a fast track to overheating the bike. So yeah, really glad we caught this in time. Here's the replacement. It's this clean white plastic one. I was hoping to get a steel version, but unfortunately there was no stock. Installing it was pretty straightforward. You just slide it onto the shaft, making sure the teeth properly seat with the rest of the system, and then snap the circle clip back into place to lock it down. Little things like this can make a big difference, especially when you're doing a build that you want to last. So it's always worth taking the time to inspect stuff properly before putting it all back together. Okay, next we're going to be reseating the valves. So how this works is first we apply some coarse lapping paste to the valve seat. This stuff is gritty. It helps clean off any carbon buildup or any other fine particles that might prevent a proper seal. Then we pop the valve into its spot and start rotating it back and forth. You can do this with a bit of pressure. Once we're happy with that, then we switch to a fine lapping paste and repeat the same process. This smooths out the surface even more, helping ensure a nice clean seal when the engine's back together. Alright, next we started checking the valve shims. This is a super important step. The shims control the clearance between the valve and the rocker arm, so getting the right size is crucial for engine performance. We went through each one, made sure the sizes were correct and that everything lined up with spec. Once we had the measurements dialed in, we began reassembling everything. Valves went back into their freshly seated positions, followed by the springs, the correct shims, and finally the rocker arms. Everything was going back together smoothly and it was really satisfying seeing it start to take shape again. We're getting closer to that first start, just a few more steps to go and this Duke might actually start again. So yeah, let's see if we can make the guy who sold it to me sad. Here is just a little before snippet of how dirty this bike was when we first stripped it. Look how milky it is on the inside there. Yeah, it don't look good, man. Now we're getting into the top end assembly. First up, we're fitting the piston into the barrel. It's important to make sure it goes on nice and snug. No wobble, no play. Everything needs to be aligned perfectly. Luckily this one fits just right. Everything was looking clean and the movement was smooth. One key thing, before you fully lock the piston in, you have to remember to thread the timing chain up through its slot. If you forget, you're going to have to take the whole piston back off again, and no one wanted to do that twice. Next up, we dropped the head gasket. This part should have been quick, but it gave us a bit of trouble. We should have added a little bit of grease to help it stick in place. That would have made things a little bit easier. Instead, it slipped a couple times while we were lining it up, which was a little bit annoying. But eventually smack bang and it locked in nicely. With that sorted, we grabbed the next piece, the cylinder head. This section already had the valve springs and rockers installed, which saved us some time. The only thing missing at this point were the cams. We gently lowered the head into place, being super careful to keep the timing chain pulled up. We used a magnet here to make sure it didn't drop back into the case. Simple trick, but it made life so much easier. Then came the alignment. Took a second to get everything to sit just right. Bit of a wobble at first, had to adjust and reposition slightly, but eventually we got it all lined up cleanly. Once everything was sitting flush, it was time to start tightening things down, one bolt at a time, working our way across evenly. This stage really starts to make it feel like a full engine again. Everything comes together piece by piece. Now we're getting the cams back in. As you can see, the entire top end is finally assembled, and now it's time for one of the most important steps. We started with the first cam, carefully lining it up with the timing marks and making sure it was positioned on the correct tooth of the timing chain. Even with the timing chain tensioner removed, it was still a mission. Getting the chain to sit right took a lot of effort and patience. Once that was in, we moved on to the second cam. This one gave us a proper challenge. When it comes to the timing, there's zero room for error. Even a single tooth off can throw everything out of sync. So we double checked, triple checked, and made sure everything was perfectly aligned. It took some struggling, but eventually we got it into place. Getting that timing right here is absolutely critical, and we weren't taking any chances because we didn't want to have to come back and do it again. A quick break in the action. We're getting a little blessing from the workshop cat. His name's Mimi. He's always hanging around the garage keeping an eye on things. But anyway, back to the bike. At this point we got the timing sorted, everything's lined up properly, so now it's time to drop in the cam holder. We carefully placed it over the cams, making sure it's seated correctly without shifting anything out of place. Once the cam holder was in, we tightened down all the bolts, cross pattern style, to make sure the pressure was even across the entire surface. Proper torque is key here. You don't want anything warping or any uneven pressure on the cams. So with that done, we did a final timing check. That meant turning the motor over by hand a few times, just rotating the crank gently to make sure the chain wasn't skipping teeth, and that all the parts were moving smoothly. If anything felt off, we'd know right away. Luckily everything looked good, timing held strong, no jumping, no weird resistance, we were happy with it. Next we moved on to sealing things up, and that starts with applying gasket paste. We took our time here, laying down a clean, even bead of paste along the edge where the valve cover meets the head. This step might seem small, but it's so important. If your seal isn't perfect, you're going to end up with oil leaks, and that's the last thing you want after all this work. Once the paste was down, we gently placed the valve cover onto the head, taking care not to smudge the paste or let the timing chain get pinched underneath. Everything had to sit flush, and we double checked the alignment before moving on. Then came the final torque. We tightened each bolt in sequence, gradually bringing them up to spec so the cover seated evenly. No rushing here, just slow and steady to make sure the seal was perfect. Then I put the timing tensioner bolt in, and with that, the engine build is finally coming to an end. We gave the crank one last rotation, just to double check that everything was smooth. No resistance, no weird noises. Everything looked and felt solid before sealing things up for good. Now here's a quick throwback to how the bike looked when we first got it. Yeah, it was rough, covered in grime, oil, and who knows what else. And to be honest, we hadn't even given it a proper clean. We had just focused on getting it running. Now that the engine's buttoned up and everything is where it should be, it's time to give this bike the clean it deserves. We hit it with some degreaser and started scrubbing, getting into all the tight spaces, wiping down the cases, and making sure we weren't leaving any gunk behind that could cause issues down the line. And just look at that, it's actually shining now. The transformation is already starting to show. This bike's got a whole new life ahead of it. Let's see if it actually does run. What's up guys, so if you made it to the end, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. That's the engine bolt done. So next thing we're going to be doing is putting it all back together. So yeah, if you made it till the end, thanks for watching. And yeah, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe because yeah, I want to get to 1,000 subscribers, but I first need to get to 100 subscribers. So yeah, hit that like and subscribe.